Welcome back, gang. It's Delty from DeltyIsGaming.com. In this video, we go in depth with the Magic Dragonknight PvP build for 1 Tamriel. The objective of this build is to make an old school, light armor AoE juggernaut DK of old. You'll be able to play solo or in a group effectively, though it's harder to play than other builds. Additionally, I'm going into much greater depth in terms of gear and giving you many options to choose from: crafting, overland, and dungeon sets. So if you're looking for a different, old school Magic DK, Laceration for 1 Tamriel is where it's at. Alright, so let's get started. What makes this thing tick? Before I go over the skills in great detail, I want to show you this little chart, which will be a handy thing if you're just trying to kind of master this build. My friend Derek made this, and so this is kind of all the things that you have to be paying attention to when you're playing this build. Buffs and debuffs, managing your resources, crowd control, and counter CC. So I'm going to go over every one of these buffs, every one of these debuffs within the skills, but if you're looking for a quick, simple cheat sheet, check this link out on my website and save it. Put it as your wallpaper. So it took me a very long time to get this build where I was enjoying it. I could play solo effectively and in a group, so I took a lot of time, spent probably over 500,000 gold, 50 hours farming gear, and this is what I came up with. Is this the only way to play a Magic Dragonknight in PvP? No. Is it the most effective? Well, I don't know, but I like the light armor take on this since everyone's running around wearing heavy and thinks that's the only way you can play in Cyrodiil. It's not true. So this is what I came up with. The Magic Dragonknight differs in terms of what the Stamina Dragonknight provides. It doesn't have a whole lot of burst unless you use your ultimates appropriately, but it has a lot of healing in different kind of ways. The number one way we get massive burst healing is Burning Embers. It costs pretty much nothing. It ramps up in terms of damage, and it heals you based on the duration. So the damage inflicted. The longer it goes, the more it heals you. So what I compare this to in my other Dragonknight build is simply Rally. The thing about Rally is you can self-cast it and don't need a person to swipe, is what I call Burning Embers, which is nice. The downside of Burning Embers is that you can't cast it on yourself. You have to find another target to hit. But just realize when you start a fight, you really should swipe one or more targets. Typically what I do is, even if I'm fighting an AoE fight, I will swipe someone or I'll cast Burning Embers on them. The reason why is I know I can recast it, or if they die or if the duration falls off, I'm going to get a massive burst heal. So to illustrate how this works real quick, we're not buff, but I'm just going to show you, kind of explain. So if I go and I do my swipe, and that's why I call it swipe, I'd re-swipe right there, 9.1 Burning Embers, and this is obviously in PvE. So you can actually just double swipe and get some decent healing. But if you swipe and just kind of let it fall off, and just kind of go, move on to another target, 4, 5, see it counts down, I'm getting a little bit low health, watch this heal. Bang! 15.8, and that thing can crit 16.7. So it's based on how much damage you do. So if you're buffed and you're doing more damage to the target because of your buffs, you're going to get more healing. Now you can have that in PvP or overhave it, but basically it's going to give you about 8 to 10k if the full duration goes off. Or you can re-swipe whenever you want to get that instant burst heal. Downside, you have to have a target available. You have to have a target close in. So we center our build around that premise of making people come to us. How do we make people come to us? Flappers. I love it. Dragonfire scales. People don't use this as Dragonknights, and that seems bizarre to me because it's one of the strongest skills that we have. Reflects 4 projectiles. It used to be unlimited, so you're going to have to recast this if you're getting zerged down a lot. But it just makes people know you're going to have to come to me. You will have to come to me to kill me. So if you're using a bow or they're trying to use dark flares on you, so on. Some things cannot be reflected, like a laser beam from a Templar, Radiant Destruction. That cannot be reflected. Soul Assault cannot be reflected. But you're going to kill people a lot of times that don't know about this skill or how to really counter it. Specifically magic slurks that sit there and cast C-frags over and over. You're just going to reflect it and stun them, take them off balance, and nuke them. You can also nuke a lot of bow users that are using the bow ultimate that don't understand this ability, so you really just got to keep this up a lot. The duration is only 4 seconds, and it's only 4 projectiles. So if you're on PC, once the 4 projectiles are consumed, the buff timers add-on that I'm using will actually tell you that the buff's down, so you'll need to recast it. So if I'm playing solo and 5 people are beating on me, I'm casting this way more frequently than every 4 seconds. And it has a large magic cost. So that's why we center our build around reduced magic costs and tons of regen. Because when you're playing solo, you need a lot more regen to survive because you're having to rely on yourself for healing, nobody else. We're going to draw people in with Dragonfire Scale. We're going to swipe them here with Burning Embers to get the healing and the damage over time going. And then our main spammable single target ability is Molten Whip. I took this morph over the other one. The other one gives you massive healing, but I just really like the extra damage. The nice thing about it is it buffs your Burning Embers, which in turn buffs your healing. Also, if you have Standard of Might on your back bar and you bar swap to this, just like my PvE build, it will still get the benefit of the Ardent Flame spell damage down below. So the other morph will give you a nice heal, but oftentimes I found I wasn't taking full advantage of Power Lash because people were they would just basically use Shuffle, they would use Elusive Mist, they would dodge roll out of my talons, so it wasn't that much more effective, and I'd rather just have a little bit more damage. This thing hurts. It has not a huge magic cost, but the downside is the range, right? 8 meters. It's not Force Pulse. So Force Pulse with the Destruction Staff gives you kind of the exact same magic cost, similar damage, but it has range. The nice thing is we can use Sword and Board and still be effective, and you can block cast this. So when I say block cast, some people don't know what that is, but basically you just hold block, and you can still cast this ability and get the benefit of blocking. You see how my block icon's up? So block casting, it matters, believe me. That's kind of what we're going to be doing to surviving. Okay, so we got Burning Embers. That's going to be our whip and dip when we get them in close. And then we have our control mechanism, our main control mechanism, single target or AoE, Burning Talons. You see me cast it. It immobilizes. What you guys got to understand about this build is 2 things. Immobilizations and CCs are on different timers. They're on different mechanics. So you can CC somebody, making, causing them to be stunned, can't use their character, and having to break free, and then you can immediately immobilize them. So what you're trying to do is control someone by not allowing them to move. I'm going to show you this in much greater detail in the dueling section or 1v1, but for instance, the way I use this in a solo application is I come up here, and I talons, and then I get the person's back. Talons, I get their back. Why is that useful? Well, you can't target me with single target abilities unless you're facing me. So like Wrecking Blow or Dizzying Swing, people that do those skills. Rapid Strikes, you see a lot more people using that. Puncturing Sweeps, it's a cone, but you have to face me. So getting this mastered of where you charge in, you talons, and then you automatically get someone's back, you constantly strafe to get their back to avoid damage. You're not taking damage, they're taking damage, you're more likely to win a lot of different scenarios. So Burning Talons' downside is its radius. Sometimes it bugs out and doesn't seem to get the whole 6 meters, and really it's magic cost. It's a ton of magic. It does good AoE damage up front and over time, and it has a massive, awesome synergy that people can use as well. So I recommend, if you're playing in a group, smash that synergy when you see Impale. Look at the tooltip, 6200, it does a lot of damage. So the key thing to use with Burning Talons is not spam it unless you have tons of magic. It's really vital to make sure you're using this as a control mechanism to burn someone's stamina down or to lock down a group. So when I'm fighting like multiple targets, like say over here, what I'll do is I'll control one with talons and then I'll go beat on the other one. So because a lot of times it's Cyrodiil, it's not perfectly 1v1s. It's 1v2, 3, 20, and they'll chase you down. So you have to be able to deal with multiple targets at once. And that's our main control mechanism. Draw Essence is another ability. The other morph does interrupts, which is useful, but I like the magic return. So let's explain a couple things about this. If you look at it, basically the channel, you suck air in or whatever, and it does magic damage, which is not fire. That's important when we get to our gear section. And it heals you for the damage caused, and then you breathe out fire damage. That's important for our gear, and returns out magic. So the sucking in isn't so much powerful, but the breathing out really is. So the way to use this is not really in a single target application. It's AoE, and it's AoE healing. So remember, this has a 6-player target cap. So you see right there, The healing isn't so powerful when there's 2 people on you. The healing becomes really, really powerful the more people are around. 6 targets is where this becomes optimal to use. Now, the damage also is really nice because we don't have to have a destruction staff on, and we can still do a lot of AoE with Draw Essence and Burning Embers. The radius is 8 meters as well, which is more than basically Elemental Ring, 6 meters, and it does a lot of damage, though you're not going to be able to spam cast this since the channel does blow up after 2.5 seconds. So use this as an AoE damage ability, as a really good self-heal with typically 2 to 3 people or more around you, and you're not going to spam cast this. Really, you're going to use Talons as a control mechanism in AoE. You're going to swipe a couple targets, and then you're going to use Draw Essence, and then pressure your main target with Molten Whip. There's a couple times I will use this in single target applications, and basically once all my buffs are up and I'm timing my burst, I'll time it around when Draw Essence goes off. So I'll do this, 2.5, and whip. So essentially Draw Essence will explode along with a whip or a meteor if I'm dueling, and that will do a lot of damage at once. Because that's what you need to do to win some of these fights and these heavy armor folks, is burst them down all at once. Then Devouring Swarm, we're a vampire in this. I think it's quintessential for a Magic Dragonknight in PvP to be a vampire. And Bats does magic damage, not fire. That's another thing that's important. It just does a lot of AoE. It doesn't last very long, but it's kind of like a, I don't know, God mode if you're really, really low and you're struggling. Plus, you get back resources based on the ultimate cost. So it's really just a self-surviving tool. It doesn't provide a whole lot of instant burst because it's over a duration. But what you're going to do is lock players down with Burning Talons. You're going to do Draw Essence, pop your Bats, and you will do a lot of AoE. While the AoE is going off, you're going to spam Whip on your single priority target with Embers on them, with Burning Talons damage over time. The explosion of Draw Essence and Bats, people are going to be hurting. Okay, my back bar, it's really important to understand why I'm using what seems odd, the Endurance set. So increase max health, double sword and board. Seems odd. So we go here to our maximum health, and in Cyrodiil you're going to get about 5,000 more health. And use bar swap, and I have about 5,000 more health on my back bar. Essentially 21 more percent magic health. Why is that relevant? It's because of Coagulating Blood. So this is our only on-demand heal, and it really gets nerfed in Cyrodiil. So basically, Gil and myself were theory crafting this prior to 1 Tamriel, thinking how could we make this skill valuable again? Supposedly it's going to get a buff in the next patch, but we're not worried about that. So what we did is we said, well, how can we get a massive amount of health on one bar to use this as our primary heal? 2 reasons. Endurance, and then Structured Entropy. So that's going to give us 8% max health, along with the other set bonuses for Endurance, making this hit heal a lot more because it's based on your missing health pool. This ability is no Breath of Life, but the nice thing about it is it's on demand, meaning you don't need a target like you do with Burning Embers. So I love this skill, and I hate this skill because it used to be so much more powerful. It costs a ton of magic. It's not that good of a self-heal, but you need something on demand for situations. If you hate this setup and you're not finding it effective, I would recommend maybe Harness Magic as an alternative, just to give yourself a shield until enemies can get up close to you, and you can use Burning Embers or Bats to self-heal. But for me, without this ability, I was getting nuked. In group PvP situations, it's still valuable to have that on-demand self-heal because I don't rely 100% on my healers, and there's going to be times you're going to get targeted. So I pretty much always leave this on. Now, Coagulating Blood has a lot of benefits. So if you look at it, it heals you. That's okay. But it gives you Major Fortitude, not so worried about that. But increase your healing received by 8% for 23 seconds. Great. That's a big boon to our healing. Also, another thing I don't think a lot of Dragonknights factor in is using this. Increase healing received by 12% while a Draconic Power ability is active. So essentially that's 20 just by maintaining this buff. So not only is it a good heal, but it is a good buff to maintain. Now we make it even more powerful by using Igneous Shields first, giving us Major Mending, and then popping Coagulating Blood. So Major Mending, now you're looking at 45% healing received amplifications. You can even go further using these potions to give you Major Vitality. So that's another 30% onto our healing received. And you can go even one step further and use everyone's least favorite or favorite set. Where is it? Malubeth. So this gives you a beam that will give you increased healing received by 30%. Notice that it's not major vitality and it's not major mending, so those things will stack. If you use heavy armor as well, instead of light, just because you want to use something different, guess what? You get even more healing received. So essentially, you can get well over 100% more healing received with this setup and just be insanely powerful, hard to take down. So that's why I set up coagulating blood on my back bar like that. I know it's a long-winded way to explain it, but you really need to understand the theory behind why we do it. Okay, so getting resources back is with basically igneous shields. So the disadvantage of light armor is a lot. Basically what you get is you get more spell crit, which isn't that big of a deal in PvP, and you get more spell penetration. That spell penetration adds up to a lot more damage than the heavy armor's bonus, which is spell damage. The spell damage compares in most situations, but for a pure DPS-based ability, Wraith is not going to outperform the spell penetration. Why is that relevant? Well, the more damage we do with a lot of our abilities, the more healing we do. The upside of heavy armor is just fantastic. We already talked about healing received, and we talked about Constitution, which basically gives you back resources when being hit. That's why you can basically permanently block with heavy armor over light armor. However, I like the old school Dragonknight being able to cast a lot of abilities because of the reduced cost and because of the recovery. So, why am I explaining this? Basically, igneous shields or any Earth and Heart ability has the chance to give us back stamina. Activating Earth and Heart ability restores 5% stamina. It also gives us ultimate and has a cooldown on it, and then we're going to pair it with Battle Roar. So sustaining our stamina is ultra important because no matter if you're a caster or a stand build, PvP is about stamina. If you can't break CC, break free, you're dead. So we sustain our stamina by 3 different ways. One is Battle Roar using ultimates to get back stamina. The larger the cost of the ultimate, the more stamina you get back. We're also going to use potions. Some of them are going to make us immune to CC, immune to disabling effects, so we can't be stunned that frequently. And then lastly, we're going to use Earth and Heart abilities on demand to get back stamina. So a lot of people don't think this is useful, but if we grab a couple mobs here and block, so I'm not going to have any stamina regen while I'm blocking. You can see my stamina in that little yellow pool go down. So I can still hold my block and basically just cast Igneous Shield over and over and over. And if I have enough magic sustained, I rarely lose stamina. See? So that's kind of why I set up the build with a ton of magic sustain, is so that way I can get back stamina reliably even using light armor. So we do that with Igneous Shields or any Earth and Heart ability. I think Igneous is the best defensive Earth and Heart ability to use. Vampire, second vampire ability, we're going to use Elusive Mist. I've talked about this in a lot of different PvP builds and videos, but basically it grants you immunity to CC and immobilizations, though your magic recovery disabled. That's a huge downside for this particular build since we're using the Lich set. How to use this appropriately is if you're out of stamina so you can't CC, break, or you can't break free, get in mist form. If you're immobilized because someone's using a snare or they're using talons on you, get in mist form. If you're in trouble and you're about to die, get in mist form in line of sight. A little tip that I've learned with mist form that will help you survive when you're kind of learning how to use it. Obviously, you want to get behind stuff. Don't stand in the open in Cyrodiil. You're going to get nuked by bow gankers sitting behind in the field for 20 minutes waiting to target you. What you need to do is basically get behind something. An advanced tip that I've learned the hard way at getting Zerg down over and over is you can block cancel this. So you click it, and then you block, and you come out of it. Click it, and you control when you come out of it with the block. Why is that useful? Essentially, there's about 5 to 6 stuns in the game that can drop block, but every other stun in the game, you're not going to be able to be stunned. So what you're trying to do is get in mist form And when you're ready to come out of it, you hold block so you can't be CC'd right away. And then you do your self-healing with Igneous Shields and Coagulating Blood. That's how you survive a lot more frequently. Because a lot of players will know this ability only lasts 4 seconds, so they're going to target you right now. But if you come out of block, you get that damage mitigation, and then you do your self-healing, you'll be much more survivable. It took me a lot of deaths to learn this and practice this, but it can save you a lot of time and pain learning it. Okay, Structured Entropy is our major skill ability. Really, we use it for 2 reasons. The max health pool is fantastic. Major Sorcery is also fantastic, but the healing that it actually does in damage is significant as well. So don't feel like it's a one-trick pony. It's a really good ability. Another thing that it does is damage over time. Why is that useful? Because it procs Falcon Scoria. So not only are you going to maintain this for your buffs, but you want to maintain it on your single target so it can proc Scoria on them. So it does a decent amount of damage, gives us a buff. We're going to have to maintain this at all times. Probably my favorite stun in the game, if not my second most favorite, is Fossilize. Now, I went with the Vampire Invigorating Drain for a very long time. If you look at Invigorating Drain, it's great. It gives us ultimate back, stuns, and it gives us a nice heal, and it costs 1700 magic with this build. You look at this, though, it has more range, it gives us a stun and an immobilize, and it does damage. The nice thing about this ability is it's one of the very, very few abilities that drops block. So if someone's blocking Invigorating Drain, it's not going to drop their block. It's not going to CC them. Fossilize will CC them. Another thing about Fossilize, well, it applies to all of our Earth and Heart abilities. It's going to generate ultimate. It's going to give us stamina back. And it has a nice 15-meter range. So I almost use Fossilize like a gap closer. So if I find a target, like right here, watch how far this thing will reach. Bang. It allows me to close the gap and get a swipe on them later. So I can't say enough about Fossilize. A lot of Dragonknights use Invigorating Drain, and it's a really, really good skill. I would just caution you, though, is the downside is it can't drop block. And if you're going up against a lot of heavy armor block players that are just spamming Breath of Life and blocking, you're not going to be able to get through their damage. And so that's why I use Fossilize. Standard of Might is what I use primarily when I'm playing solo. The reason why I use this, I use Shifting Standard for a while, but it just bugs out too often. It basically makes you incredibly powerful within the standard. Yes, it can be negated. Yes, there's some downsides to it because it can't move, but you get increased damage and damage reduction. Plus, it has a 250 ultimate cost. That's going to make our Battle Roar passive just shoot up about 10,000 resources. So that's why I use Standard of Might. It's not going to work in every situation, though. The way to use this is basically lure 2 to 3 people into a closed area, a choke point, drop it, talons them, deep breath, they will die. And especially if they're new players and they don't understand, get out of standard, because it has that major D file. So they're not going to be able to heal themselves that much. It is incredible, though it's not going to work on every situation. If you're going to go up against like dueling or single target people, you're really going to need Shooting Star because it gives you that massive amount of burst and gives you back ultimate. So you're going to get more ultimate more frequently. You're going to get more resources more frequently due to Battle Roar, though it doesn't have major D file. And it does have a nice stun with it. So the trick to using Meteor on a target is basically combining it with Fossilize to stun them so they can't drop block. So if I stun this mob here, get out of there, and you see the circle on their feet, that means they're not stunnable again. So you're not going to be able to use a Meteor effectively until they're free of stuns. Like they don't have a circle on their feet. Why is this relevant? This is what you do with Meteor. You cast it, then you cast Fossilize. So you see that? Basically, they can't block it. So they can't avoid all of that damage at once. And then you lock them in place on the Meteor damage over time effect. So you're going to wait for your player to be stunnable. So they don't have a circle around their feet. They're not immune to CC. You're going to cast Meteor, then cast Fossilize, so they can't avoid the damage. And that's how you burst down a single target player, regardless if they're wearing heavy armor or not. The adaptations that I use for group play is essentially I put Eye of the Storm and a Destruction Staff on my back bar because you become the center of action, has a ton of magic, but this thing just melts everybody. The downside is solo, you really are going to lose tons and tons of survivability without the double Sword and Board, the double set bonus, the extra healing because you have a lot of health pool. So I don't really recommend this for solo play, but for group, it's great if you have a dedicated healer. So I'll put that back on here. I'll drop Fossilize, usually for proximity detonation. So especially fighting larger groups. I usually keep Structured Entropy on, but you can drop it if you're going to use Spell Power Potion or have someone else that provides the major sorcery buffs, like other Dragonknight using Molten Weapons or some conversion of that. And then I usually put Elemental Ring on like that with the Destruction Staff. Still have my self-heal, but I have a spammable AoE ability, a massive burst, both Eye of the Storm and Proxy Dead. So that's how I would play for a group. Before I show you all the gear options, I want to refer you to my website link. Please visit this. I put a lot of time into the written guides, and I have a ton of information on alternative sets that you guys can use. I'm going to explain what I did during the testing process and why I spent so much money, gold, trying to figure this out. But remember, there's tons of resources that you can look at any time on my website. And here's just a sample of it. Some other options you can do if you want to use heavy armor. Rattle Cage is a really good set because it gives you the major sorcery all the time, but it just has a ton of spell damage, and it's really good. Kagranax is also another really good set. Everyone's favorite Black Rose, though I don't think it has a whole lot of value in this specific build because I can get around the stamina issue pretty easily. So I would go with a more offensive set than Black Rose, but it's up to you. And then you could do Sword and Board Burning Spellweave with the Jewelry, and that would give you a lot more defensives, and you probably can play that while you're learning this build at first, because light armor is a lot harder to play, but it's a lot more fun and it's old school, so you don't have to just ride the meta humping like everyone else. Okay, consumables, I use a crap ton of different stuff, as you can see. Playing solo, and if my resources are good, I use these so I can just basically heal like a truck. Typically when I charge in to a group or if I'm in a duel, I'll use these since I can't be CC'd for around 16 seconds. Tripods for sustain, so after I've fought for quite a while, I'll use one of these suckers. Also, I'll use these if I'm dueling. People hate using poisons, but they're very effective. And then I'll use these when I'm running around in the open field and Nightblades are just licking their chop trying to gank me. Pop these suckers, get them out of stealth, nuke them down, and they will get mad. I also use the Tri-Stat food. I can't say enough about this. Yes, using blue food will give you more damage, but having 4k extra stamina is the difference between you getting nuked down a lot and not. You gotta have a lot of stamina. I said before, I spent well over 500,000 gold figuring out this build in terms of gear and 50 plus, maybe even 100 hours of farming gear. Okay, so blah, 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 Delta, we don't care. You sit at home in game, shut up. Okay, I get that. So what I figured out is Burning Spellweave is what I consider the best in slot for damage. Typically my PvP builds have one set bonus based on damage and then one set bonus based on resources and sustain. So I'm going to come at you with that in mind. So Burning Spellweave, light armor. You can get it in jewelry as well, which opens up things because you don't have to use light armor for this build. You don't have to use light armor to have Burning Spellweave advantage. If we look at the set bonuses, max health, spell damage, spell crit, and then the 5-piece gives you flame damage, 20% chance to do the burning status effect, extremely important and undervalued, and spell damage for 608 seconds with a 12-second cooldown. The thing to know about the cooldown is the cooldown starts once this proc, so essentially it's a 4-second cooldown. PvP is about burst, it's not about sustained DPS like PvE. So that added big, huge chunk of spell damage without sacrificing damages on the 2, 3, and 4 piece makes this ideal. I have used Silks of the Sun instead of this set for a very long time, and I did not like it. Reason why: adds 400 spell damage to your flame abilities. Okay, why does that matter? Well, a lot of our abilities don't do flame damage. Delta, you're crazy. No, I'm not. Draw Essence, the very first drink of this, the very first damage is magic damage, and it gives us healing based on how much damage we do. So right there, that effect becomes very limited because it's not fire damage at the start. Structure Entropy, also not fire damage. If you're using Proxy Det, not fire damage. If you're using Devouring Swarm, not fire damage. Another benefit of Burning Spellweave is when this procs, what you do is you can bar swap and you still get the spell damage benefit on your back bar. So all your healing and damage abilities on your back bar get the benefit. Also, what is the burning status effect? Essentially, that applies a little dot that can do 1000 damage per second on a target. Also, it's a dot, so it can apply Falcon Scoria, making Burning Spellweave fantastic. So some options that you can use if you don't have Burning Spellweaves. The Sun is really good. Also Spinners, a lot of people are liking, and let me explain why I didn't use Spinners. I tested this. Spinners gives you a massive amount of spell penetration. It goes very well with our light armor passive as well. The downside is if you bar swap, you're not getting the benefit. And two, if you're playing against someone using shields, shields have no mitigation. They're based on your max pool, like max magic if you're a Sork, or if you're using the bone shield based on your max health pool. So this 5-piece bonus when someone has a shield basically is completely nullified. So that's another reason why I didn't use Spinners over Burning Spellwave. I spent a ton of time testing, believe me. I got all the sets, and this is what I found best. So 2-piece Monster Helm, I went with Falcon Scoria. Reason why is the burst damage. In solo play, I need the ability to burst someone down with Burning Spellwave and Scoria, because I don't have a specific ability like Incapacitating Strike on a Stamina Nightblade that just does 10k damage at 1 second. So this is why I chose that. Now, Grothar is extremely powerful and is a very, very good alternative. It does flame damage, it procs off of any damage, so it happens a lot more frequently. It does AoE damage, though it doesn't have the burst potential for solo play. When I play in groups, I definitely switch to Grothar just so I can do more AoE. But if I'm playing solo, I need to be able to kill someone and get out quickly. That's why I chose Scoria. An odd choice, but something powerful, undervalued is Chokethorn. Since the Dragonknight, may lack an on-demand burst self-heal, this thing heals like a truck. And if you're playing solo and you're just getting nuked down and you're frustrated because of the lack of healing that Coagulating Blood does, try Chokethorn. It'll keep you alive a lot more. And then obviously Malabeth, everyone hates this, so I really don't use it. But it is extremely powerful still, though somewhat cheesy. Okay, so for the second set, what I talked about is Sustain, and I like the Lich. So my chart, I kind of made a mistake on that earlier. Basically, you're using 5 Lich, so 1 piece on the body, 3 pieces of jewelry, and then a shield. So it took me a long time to get this set up, and the reason we're doing that is so when we swap to our back bar, we're still getting a 4 and a 4-piece bonus. So we're still getting magic recovery from the Lich, and we're still getting spell crit from Burning Spellwave. So I don't have the sword, so I just made the dagger sharpened. Took me a long time to get this. The Lich is just utterly, extremely powerful. Gives you magic recovery, though the magic recovery can be cut off when you go in mist form. It's our sustainment tool. So what you want to set your build up for is that you're running out of magic or you're hitting that 33% mark essentially once a minute. If you're not hitting that, you have too much recovery because you want this thing to proc. So once this thing procs, we're sitting well over what we normally would be. So let's just hit this. So that's with my magic potion up. Where is it? Magic recovery 1600. So let's use some high skills. Spamming that button. Yeah. Everyone loves that sound of me clicking over and over. Come on. Remember that we have it set up so it's only going to proc on our front bar. So, boom. And then we bar swap. The proc sustains. And we're at 3300 magic recovery. And this is on an orc with the Atronach Munda Stone. So that allows you to sit there and spam cast things for healing or getting stamina back, kind of, limiting the downsides of light armor. I can't say enough about the Lich. It is fantastic. Some other sets that I tried, Amber Plasma is a popular one, though it doesn't have the burst sustain that I like. Plus the stamina recovery is nice, but I block a lot of the time, so I wasn't really seeing the benefit of that. There's also a bunch of other things like Desert Rose. I don't have that because it costs a lot of gold or AP to get it. Bloodthorn Touch, which is formerly Adroitness, gives you magic and stamina back when you do attacks. Really, really good overland set that can be found in Glenumbra. My website has a list of all the different ones, so check it out. So the traits that I went with, I like about 2 sturdy on the body. Where are they? 2 sturdy on the body and then 1 on the shield. You can't go more sturdy. The reason I go 5 in pen, 3 sturdy with a shield is because of Nightblades. you're going to be fighting against really skilled Nightblades. They're going to do mass hysteria, open you up, drop in your block, and if you don't have a whole lot of impen, there's no counterplay. You'll die. So if you're going up against, players that don't really know what's going on, blah, 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 yeah, you can just do tons of sturdy and just hold block permanently. But if you're going up against the best of the best, they're going to know how to counter a Dragonknight. The more impen you have, the more likelihood you're going to survive that Salines, in-cap, mass hysteria combo. On the jewelry, if you're running Lich and you have, your experience, you probably want to go all spell damage, especially if you're using a magic-based race. And I'm using an orc, so I went 1 reduced spell cost. So that way I have a ton of reduced spell cost and I have a ton of regeneration. You're also going to want to do a flame damage enchant on your burning spellweave weapon. The reason why that damage will proc burning spellweave. So if you charge in or you're light attacking in between your whips, you're going to have a more likelihood of keeping that spell damage effect up at all times. Back bar powered, since we're basically just healing on this, which is a powered endurance. People sell these for 2K because they don't think they have any value. And then sturdy, or you can do infused to even get a larger health pool. So it's up to you, whatever you want. Okay, my champion point setup. Magician right here, 90 points. I got 57 into Arcanist because I have a lot of regeneration as well. Sometimes I actually do put 10 points into Sprinter just because I'm an orc and I sprint and don't use a gap closer. And then 20 and 20 here, reduce block cost and getting CC'd. I go 10 into Blessed, 20 into Elfborn, 100 into Elemental Expert, 20 into Spell Erosion, and then 37 into Thaumaturge, since I am using a lot of damage over time effects. I go 20 into Resistance to give me a little bit more critical resistance. 17 to Stick Skin, 70-70 split, and then 10 in the Quick Recovery. Is this the best champion point setup? I don't know, but that's what I use. Okay, Orc is obviously not the best for this, and I didn't want to spend $30 changing to a Dummer, which I consider the best race for this build because of 2 reasons. Well, $30, and I wanted to prove that you can play a stamina-based race and do good as a magic build. You just got to open your mind a little bit. So if you look at Orc, increase max health and stamina, well, that's good. Increase heal and receive, that's good. And actually sprinting, that's good. So some of these stam builds, playing magic, actually have some benefit. So don't just race change every second if the going gets rough or you want to try a different build. Just simply switch your character, go grind them skills up. It's not that bad. If I were to pick the optimal race, number 1 by far is Dummer. So you're not going to get the health, but you're going to get the stamina. So it's a huge boon to have 9% max stam. 6% max stam, 9% max magic. You get more flame damage, resistance to flame. It's just incredible on a Dunmer. You're going to do a lot more damage. Number 2 would be Argonian. Yep, I said it. Argonian is probably my second overall favorite race comparatively to Dunmer. You're going to get max health, max magic, healing receive, healing done, and the potion passive gives you back a flood of resources. It goes really well with tri-stat food. I'm telling you right now, Argonians are very, very survivable, even on a Dragonknight or any class. Love them. Third, well, you could go High Elf, Breton, or really anything. Basically in PvP, it's not PvE. You have a lot more freedom to use different gear sets and different races and skills and not get punished like PvE because you just have to have the most DPS possible. So if you like your Nord Dragonknight and you want to play this build, play it. It doesn't matter. You can get good at it regardless of what race you are. All right, now I'm going to shut up and show you some clips of how to actually play this build. I know it's a long build video, but I want to be very thorough. So I'm going to show you how to deal with what I call the proc turds. And that is people using Widowmaker, Viper, Red Mountain, all those proc sets that everyone's complaining about. You can still play this build and get around those type of things. Also, a Templar using Beam. Some of these people that give you a lot of problems. Show you how to deal with it. Show you how to fight, survive. So you can play this build effectively on your own. First clip we have up is just basically how to fight outnumbered in a small group with another Dragonknight. So your thing here is not the open field. So you can see we're clearly outnumbered, tons of people on here. So we're going to go in the tower and get them in a clinch point, a choke point. So that way they have to come to us. They're in a small area. That's where the Dragonknight excels at. So we're going to mistform through them all, come in here. Oh, look, it's stealthy. Let's go kill him. Okay, so we're going to go up to the second floor, so they're in a really small choke point. I'm going to use my spell power potion here, so I don't have to worry about entropy, and I have some magic regen. I get in trouble. I go up. I have excessive stam, so I can dodge roll once. Now I'm just getting my buffs up. trying to make sure my friend's okay, and then we're going to time our ultimates at once. Now, bats. If you do bats, lock them in place with talons and deep breath, you can kill a lot of enemies like this. Now all the damage people are gone, it's just a tank left. Similarly, just do this over and over and you get really effective at it. Second clip is obviously fighting against a Zerg on the bridge, but really just movement speed and using elusiveness to kind of survive and get out of trouble. So I'm going to shoot them to kind of get their attention and see if they come up here, and they will come up here. So we got a couple guys that come up here first, and they're just chasing this one guy down. Simply just kind of survive and hang out and see if you can't get some embers on them, talons, deep breath. I take one out. So now they're going to get mad and they're going to come here. Elevation is your friend. They drop ultimates. I do one dodge roll, CC break, elusive mist, get away. Elevation is the key because ultimates and other abilities won't work that very well. So you get back, get resources, get your buffs up, and use elevation and line of sight to your advantage. Now we have a fight against a well-experienced Magic Templar build running something similar to what I had for B mode. So what I'm going to do here is just focus on staying on top of him and recognizing what he's trying to do. So he's going to try to cleanse my dots off, but when I get low, what I'm trying to do is make sure I can bash. You see that? Why is bash important? Because it stops his either Dark Flare or his Jesus Beam, his Radiant Destruction. So what he's going to want to do is to get away from me. What I'm going to want to do is stay on top of him. You see how I use Talons there and get his back? So Talons is going to basically be your control mechanism so he can't target you. See? Get his back. Now I'm not doing a whole lot of damage because he has so much damage with Breath of Life, but I'm not letting him put pressure on me. When he does put pressure on me, continue to heal with Burning Embers, Coagulating Blood, get your buff up, but don't let him get some distance. Distance will kill you because he will do Radiant Destruction. So I can basically just last forever kind of like this. He gets me in trouble, what do? I try to get his back with Talons. Limit the damage taken to yourself. A clip here on how to deal with Proctored. So someone using basically the Flavor of the Month build, Black Rose, Viper, so on. So what you're going to do is kind of understand their build and what they're using. So this person, Lars here, is using Widowmaker. What that tells me is that he has a 10-second cooldown on his proc. It's going to glow big and green, and so I'm just going to basically time what I'm doing around that specific status effect. See, there's the green blow up. So I know 10 seconds from now his burst will be back up. So all I'm doing until then is controlling him. You see how I have Talons on him? His main spammable ability is using Wrecking Blow or Dizzying Swings. So I'm going to time my blocking around that, and I just get his back. He's using a lot of dodge rolls to get out of it, and so he's not going to put a whole lot of pressure on me until his Widowmaker procs. Once his Widowmaker procs, to recover, either use potions, a cooldown like Burning Embers. You can also use your ultimate to get resources back up. But really holding block around when his Widowmaker can proc is going to prevent you from dying. Constantly stun him every 6 seconds unless he uses the movability pots. And these guys aren't really that much of a problem. Last clip here, and that is basically dealing with pressure and getting to a choke point. So when you're in open field Cyrodiil and people are just zerging you down, you can see a bunch of people on me. What I'm doing is just rock humping. I'm going around a rock, I'm low on resources, I'm just surviving, trying to get these guys, lure them into a choke point, somewhere where they can't get out easily. So they come, they follow me, they think they're going to kill me, great. So I'm going to Talons them, bats, lock them in place where that AoE damage happens, and boom, you just nuke them down, no big deal. Well, gang, that is a video. I know it was massive, but I didn't want to piecemeal a bunch of videos together and make you have to watch 5 of them to get this information. So hopefully you come back and refer to this. Check my website. I got a lot of cool graphics and different things. So shout out to Derek for making those. Really enjoyed this build. It's old school. It's only going to get more powerful, and it's really fun. You don't have to play heavy armor Dragonknight to be effective. Think about your build, theory craft it, and practice it. Yes, it's really hard to play light armor at first, but if you get the hang of it, it can be fun and effective.